this meeting, right, that we are holding is about global consciousness. It's about the consciousness of oneness is about global consciousness. And so we are making it available globally. So what is happening here, you know, in a couple of weeks, will be anybody, anywhere in the world will be able to access for free. And to me, that's what it's about. Yeah. What interests me is how to work with the creation from a spiritual point of view. How to work with the oneness within creation. Because if God is one, then everything. And God is everything, then everything is one. And it seems that once you are present in that place of oneness, you can have a relationship with creation that is complete, that is veiled from you if you exist within the framework of separation and just individuality. And it's like once you claim that mystical oneness here in this world, just as if you claim the transcendent relationship with God, that one-to-one, that allows you to have a very particular relationship with God that is based on oneness. It is, I am he whom I love is me. And that's al-halaj. It is once inwardly you are in that place of a relationship with God based on oneness. He is not other, it is one. That is what the Sufis really call baqa, abiding in God. In Sufism there is the stages of the journey which are called fana, annihilation, which annihilates you as a separate self, strips away the veils, the coverings, and then you arrive, if there's anybody to arrive, at what's called baqa, which is abiding in God. And that is an evolving, ongoing relationship with the divine experienced as oneness. And once you are present in that oneness with God, it opens the door to a whole different experience of a relationship with the divine. And if you then mirror that in relationship with creation, in my experience, once you are present in creation from a point of oneness, that opens the door to a whole different relationship with life, which is which is, I suppose, a reflection or an echo of the relationship, the inner relationship with the divine, with this intimacy. And it gives you access to something within life that otherwise is closed from you. And what really interests me is what does it open up? And how then can you participate in life from a place of oneness, which seems to have a lot more possibility than participating in life from a place of separation of life and me, or creation and me. And one of the things I have sensed is that if you step into that place, a whole degree of effort in life is taken away. Because that's what happens in the relationship with God. Once you step into the place of oneness, then a whole lot of effort in relationship to God is taken away. It just works differently. And I think that we as a culture work far too hard in life. Our relationship to life is constellated far too much around effort. And I don't think it's necessarily meant to be like that. I think there is a very kind of a more ergonomic relationship to life, a kind of more a more practical relationship to life, more cost-effective relationship with life, more and from that place, a relationship to life based on oneness is much more practical and much more energy efficient. And I think it will open doors to a whole different way of being in life that is not so demanding. I don't think life was meant to be such hard work. It is very, very hard work. This is what is important to me. It's very, very hard work if you say that the divine is somewhere else. Then being in this world that lacks the divine is incredibly hard work, because you immediately take out of life a whole lot of possibilities, and, for example, you take magic out of life, and all sorts of other aspects of life, the doors are closed if you say that God exists only in heaven and this is a sinful world that is without God. But in the same way as in the relationship to God, if you say God is somewhere else, you can never reach him. But for the Sufis, we say he's in our heart, and then he is present. So then it is much more accessible. We live this intimate relationship with God, of lover and beloved, which is not easy, but it allows the divine to participate in you, rather than it always being about you and your struggle and your effort. So it is somehow to bring that back into life where it always used to be, but somehow over the last 1,000 years or so it got forgotten. But also to do it quickly, not to say, well, this is a process because it's going to take another 1,000 years to reclaim this relationship to life, because I think there is a certain urgency to do it now, and not to say that it's a gradual process. This is also part of the conditioning that we carry, that it should be a process, because I don't think it has to be a process. I think it can be just a way of being. That, either everything is God and everything is divine, and you accept that and you live that, or you live something else. And the moment you accept and live that everything is divine, then certain doors in life open. And to me, that's when the fun begins. But we'll see.
Well, I'm interested after the first question about the whole thing of experiencing the oneness.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my life, I've had those moments of really knowing that I was one with absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But they're transient. And they weren't at all when I was meditating or wanting to, and I can't figure out why, public transportation or the New York subway or...
Yeah.
And so I look to see well, it happens when I'm not expecting it, and so is there any, I'm just looking, not to strive for it, but how do I keep...
Those are given. I always like T.S. Eliot's description of them as moments in and out of time. You cannot try to recreate them, right?
No,
it just happens. But what you can do is to bring the awareness that it gave you into your ordinary consciousness. It is like you had that moment, you were there. In fact, you're always there, but your everyday consciousness separates you from that awareness. So you can allow that, even the memory of that experience, to begin to reconstellate your ordinary consciousness, to give space to the oneness. The Sufis talk a lot about the value of imagination, because through the imagination the imagination is like an intermediary between one world and the other world. There does come a time through mystical practice, spiritual practice, when you are constantly in this state of oneness. But that takes time. But you don't have to create such a separation. You can allow yourself to inhabit this intermediary world. And that's why I said that's like the internet is a symbol of that. It's a symbol of a consciousness that works on the plane of oneness. And it is like you allow the experience to influence your consciousness. So you're not just always looking for that moment, because it's going to come when it's going to come. And it's going to come when you don't expect it, when you're tying up your shoes, when you're, who knows when. It just comes. But each time it comes, it actually changes something in your consciousness. It leaves a certain trace behind. You're never the same person again because you know something. It's like towards the end of his life, Jung was asked, do you believe in God? He said, no, I don't believe, I know. You've had an experience of something. You know oneness is. Nobody can ever take that away from you. But you can allow that memory, although it's not a memory because it's not in the past, it's actually a memory of something that's always present. You can allow that to be, just to be in your consciousness. And my sense is it will then begin to work like a virus. It can dismantle the patterns of consciousness that make you think you are not one. You can't get given too much of that, because then the mind kind of blows a fuse. In fact, my teacher, Mrs. Tweedy, after her teacher died in India, she was in this state all the time, and she had to go to the Himalayas in retreat to enable the mind to come back so she could function in the world. So you get a few of those moments, but just somewhere you know something, and if you allow that knowing, rather than always looking for the next moment, just allow that knowing to be present, it will start to change your consciousness. And it will start to allow you to see things you couldn't otherwise see. That's my sense. But it's like just to welcome it, to say, yes, that was... Somebody lifted a veil for a moment. And maybe it'll come again. Yeah.
You were speaking before about the change that's occurred where now the gates are open, so we no longer need initiation to experience oneness with the divine. Can you talk a little bit more about what led to that change?
What led to that change? That's a very interesting question. Thank you for asking. What led to this change? This has to do with an understanding that humanity has come to the end of one era, that one cycle of creation has come to an end. And to me that is most visible in the fact that as a species we're beginning to destroy our own ecosystem. And any species that destroys its own ecosystem has come to the end of its cycle. And then you begin to notice changes, things that weren't here a few years ago. Something else in the air. It's very difficult to kind of fix. Yes, there is a spiritual awakening, but it's more than that. There is a global consciousness, but it's more than that. It's like we're actually living in a different world. What intrigues me is actually that how many people don't notice it, that they are still watching this old movie play itself out. And spiritually, we're taught to turn our attention just from here to here. It is something that's kind of a basis of spiritual practice, is that you begin your life through your conditioning and you're focusing in one way. It's like this line from Joseph Campbell when he says people spend their whole lives climbing a ladder only to realize when they got to the top they put it against the wrong wall. And the idea of spiritual practice is to hopefully turn towards the right wall before you start climbing the ladder. And it's a simple shift in consciousness from like looking here, for example, the goals of material success, to looking here, fulfilling the destiny of the soul. Yeah? So it's very simple, very basic shift. And if you make that shift, you will find that the world is actually different. You may just it even smells different. Yes, you still have to go to work, you still may have a boss who's a pain in the ass, you still might not have enough money at the end of the month, but there's something else there. And something is coming alive in a way that it wasn't before. And this has to do, for me, with the whole mystery of life. Life is reawakening. There are small cycles of life and there are very big cycles of life. And we are in this moment of an end and a beginning of a very, very big cycle of life. And part of this transition is that a work that used to be only done by initiates, hidden in the inner worlds, is now being made public, is now accessible to anybody. And this has to do with how the world functions as a living spiritual being. Now, what is interesting is that the last 1,000 years or more of our culture have actually completely censored that, even from our memories. It is remarkably effective. If you think what different repressive regimes have kind of burnt the books in different times in history to get rid of certain memories, the patriarchal civilization has done an amazing job in, for example, they couldn't get rid of myths altogether, so they made them fairy stories only for children. And there is this remarkably efficient, once you look at it seriously, it's incredibly efficient job they have done in completely censoring a whole awareness that for thousands and thousands of years was basic part of life. Once you make the shift, turning from this very, very materialistic, scientific, masculine-dominated world, just over here, first of all to your own soul, because it's through your own soul you connect to the soul that is the world, to the soul that is life. Then you will find, say, yourself in a very, very different world that is beginning to wake up. And you have to experience it for yourself. And once you experience it for yourself, then you are really present there in this world that is waking up. And as I say, there's a certain spiritual work that used to be done by the priests, by the priestesses. Everybody else knew about it, but only they were allowed to do it. And what happens in each stage of human beings' evolution is that more and more is given to humanity. Human consciousness evolves. In exactly the same way as you grow up, you're expected to be more and more responsible. More and more is given to you to do, until that terrible one when you have to do your own taxes, and you have to pay your own bills. It's called being responsible or going into adulthood or something, yeah? And it is exactly the same way for humanity. And there was always a group of initiates who looked after the spiritual well-being of the world. And part of my work is to bring a certain conscious awareness that there is this tradition of not just looking after one's own spiritual well-being, but looking after the spiritual well-being of the world, and that this is something anybody can participate in who has the right attitude. And that is a central note to this time of global transition. People see the signs of global transformation and global marketplace and global communication, but there's a certain very essential point, which is the spiritual dimension of this transition, of this transformation. And it seems to say in the West we've forgotten it. Or it's actually not just we've forgotten it, it has been quite systematically and very, very purposefully removed from our collective consciousness. And it has been removed for the simple reason is certain elements of the patriarchy wanted to have absolute power on this world. And if they had any inclination that there was such a thing as spiritual power in this world, they removed it. And it was done quite systematically, starting in the 5th century with, I think it was the 5th century, Peter here, with the Gnostics, getting rid of the Gnostics, and then was done quite systematically done. So it was a power grab. And as a result, the divine, how the divine works within creation has been forgotten. But it's just there. And it's very, very beautiful because it is so easily accessible. And just there. That's why when we did this meditation, suddenly there were certain energies present to do with creation. After about 20 minutes, suddenly there was just this other energy in the room. You didn't have to go on a 6-year retreat to find it. You didn't even have to fast. You could have tea and cookies. And suddenly it was there in the room, Yeah. It's very beautiful.
Do you ever feel that there have ever been other cultures or places in time where this discussion has gone on before?
Oh, yes. It is like a wave or a stream that comes to the surface at different times and different places, according to the need of the time and the place and the people. And yeah.
So whether or not we actualize this moment, I mean, there'll probably be another moment later.
Yes, there will always be another moment later, but a certain opportunity will be lost if we don't actualize this moment, because it has to do with the need of the time. Yes, in 2,000 years' time, there will be another era, and the divine will begin to reconstellate itself in a different way. But there is a moment now, and part of the work of any spiritual practice is to be aware of the moment and to participate fully in the moment, because let's just say you get a hell of a spiritual kick from being at that moment and being open and attentive to what the moment can bring. Why? Because most of the time in spiritual practice, you're working with your own energies and you get a bit of divine grace. Yeah? There are these moments in cosmic time when you can get plugged right into the mains. And this is a moment. It's a bit scary because even the way spiritual things used to work don't work the same way anymore if you plug into the mains. But what I've been shown is if you really participate in this, you can actually flip a whole level of spiritual evolution in one go. What would take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of grace, you can just flip onto a different level. So that's why I want to be present where the party is actually happening, rather than wait another couple of thousand years for the next party. And also, it's a lot of fun. If you really tune into it, it's a lot of fun. We have missed the element of fun from spiritual practice. And, creation is a lot of fun. Because when there's real creation, things can happen that couldn't otherwise happen.
Thank you. You were talking before about the web being going to be alive but not alive now.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to recognize it when it is alive?
When it's alive.
What the signs?
What are the signs when the web becomes alive?
Or anything, in general.
When something comes alive. Oh, it speaks to you. When something comes alive, it communicates directly with you. Okay. Have you ever noticed the difference when somebody is talking at you and somebody is talking to you?
Yes.
Right? It is as simple as that, because it is all about relationship. And it's not just about relationship, it's about patterns of relationship. It's a bit like those Islamic patterns they have on the side of mosques, those beautiful patterns that are all stars coming together and moving and changing. And if something is static out there and you're separate, and it's often giving you stuff or telling you stuff, then it's dead.
So resonance.
Resonance, yeah. When you feel a resonance, it is like even in this gathering, if there's a resonance, then it's alive. Otherwise, it's just information. I mean, I have no desire just to give you information, because what is interesting for me, I don't get the information if it's not alive. If a gathering like this is alive, if there is a resonance, then I get much more information to share than if it's not. So it is as simple as that. You notice when something is alive because it speaks to you. It doesn't speak at you. It does not tell you what to do. For me, this is a residue of a patriarchal consciousness that has told everybody what to do for quite a few centuries. And I think life has got bored with being told what to do. And I think life is about relationship. It's about dialogue. Life is a dialogue. And when you feel that something is a dialogue and something is talking to you and not at you, something in you responds. And it's that meeting, when something in you that responds meets, that is very special. It is like it is a catalyst, really. It is like a spark. And then something in you wakes up. This is what they call this aha moment. What is aha moment? It means you for a moment had access to a higher level of consciousness without knowing it. It's like something in you wakes up. Ah! And so you don't always know what it is. Later you can actually realize what it was that was waking up. But it's that. And it hasn't happened yet. There are signs of it. But remember, there is also this very, very heavy conditioning to make sure nothing happens. There is enormous amount of energy being put to make sure nothing happens. And that's to me why a group like this is so wonderfully subversive, because you can be directly tuned in to the web of life without anybody noticing. And you can have direct access to the magic of creation too. I'm convinced that most people are not aware that almost a lot of what we think of as spiritual life is actually preparation. It is purification, it is all those practices and everything are preparation. Because when the moment comes, it kind of blows you somewhere else. And my sense is a lot of what has happened spiritually in the West, or not just spiritually, in many ways in the West in the last 20 years, is a preparation. It is for something to happen. And my feeling, I want to be there when it happens, because I think it's going to be, could be quite extraordinary. Of course, you could, like all things, you could sit there and wait and nothing happens. But that's a gamble you have to take.
My question is, does love take another dimension with unity consciousness?
Wow, that's a serious question. Does love have another dimension with unity consciousness? Yes. Because with unity consciousness, you are working consciously with the real nature of love, which is oneness. There's a whole drama in love in which it pulls you back to oneness. You can even see this in human relationships where if you really love somebody, you want to get closer and closer to them, even to merge physically together. So there is a whole drama of love that takes you from separation back to union. And because the nature of love is oneness. And so it wants to express its nature to you. And that's why it pulls you back to oneness, even with oneness with God. Spiritually, love draws you from separation from God, from experiencing being separate from God, into experiencing being one with God. But in the state of oneness, love expresses its real nature. So if you approach love with an awareness of oneness, then love doesn't have to draw you into oneness to begin with. It can work right away, and it can reveal its potency. Our teacher, he said, love is the most powerful force in the universe. Love is incredibly powerful, and it is actually part of the very structure of creation. And if you have an attitude of love and oneness towards creation, then you can be completely present where love manifests itself in creation. You can work with the energy of love within creation. And that means you can work with the oneness of creation. To me, the limitations of a lot of people who, for example, do ecological work, is they are not working from a place of oneness, they are working from a place of separation. They are trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle back together. And I don't think you can do that anymore. I think the puzzle's been torn into so many pieces and has been damaged that you can't fit the pieces back together again. And what happens when creation comes to that place is it recreates itself. And it recreates itself from the basic principle of love and oneness, because creation is an expression of divine love. And it is actually the love is under the surface in everything. And it is also an expression of divine oneness. So love and oneness are very, very close together. So if you approach creation from a place of love and oneness, you're right where it's all happening. And then I think then you really begin to be aware of what it means to be a human being. Because human beings are so beautiful and they are so divine. And for some reason it is veiled from us, it is hidden from us. But there is a need now for real human beings to participate. And to be a real human being means to acknowledge the oneness that is within life, the oneness that is part of creation, and the love that we all have. Because I think in our depths, we all love life somewhere. We all love this extraordinary creation of which we are a part. We don't know how to use it. We don't know how to live it very well. But I don't think we would be here if we didn't love this creation. I think there is this thread of love that connects us to life, that is as essential as the breath. And we need to learn how to live it. The Sufis say we need to learn how to be here for his sake. And for the Sufi, that is a relationship of love. And then you begin to be aware of what it really means to be a human being, how incredibly beautiful, incredibly powerful, and how pivotal in creation a human being is. And so, yes, if one can approach creation from the place of oneness with love, then anything can happen. Because I always say it is like a lover. If you really love your lover, she or he wants to show their best side to you. She wants to show how beautiful she is. How beautiful she is. She wants to cook you a beautiful meal if you approach her with love. And life is the same. If you bring that note of love in, then life responds. Then she wants to show you her hidden qualities, her magical nature. Then she wants to make strange synchronicities take place, to begin to speak to you in a different way. Because nobody notices her. We don't notice love. Yes, occasionally we notice a beautiful spring morning or the buds on the trees, but then we have forgotten it 10 minutes later because we are so busy with our business. And that's why Robert Johnson, he once said, when you have a really bad day, when nothing is going very well, stop for 2 minutes and smell a rose. Because then you change something in your self-afflicted bad day. You re-establish a relationship with life, a two-way relationship with life. You smell the rose of life, just for a moment. And he said, practically, then you will find you make the appointment. You don't get caught in the traffic. It's amazing how it works. So, try it. But with love and oneness, anything can be done then. Anything. Because you come to life in the right way. And love as oneness. Then it is the real thing. It is the real thing. I think we confuse love with emotion a lot of the time. And love is not an emotion. Love is a very, very, very potent, beautiful, powerful force. Rather than thinking of yourself as one person, think of yourself as part of this whole web of life, this organic, interrelating, intercommunicating, because it's communicating. And once if you're a little bit, then you're aware there are angels and there are spirits that are helping us. That's why I loved it when we did this day with Sandra Ingerman. She stressed how the spirits are there all trying to help us too. And that's an even bigger world. Then you've got, all of those worlds that are helping us. And we're part of this whole incredibly beautiful support network. And there is love there, because those relationships are based on love. Real relationships are based on love. I suppose you could have a relationship based on hate if you wanted, but I don't know if you can really have a relationship based on fear, because the fear contracts you into yourself, so there's no relationship. I think in the web of life, the real relationship is based on love. And love talks to love. I don't know if people are aware of that. There is a whole level of communication that happens through love. It happens through love and it happens through light. They're very synonymous. There's a whole dialogue between, once you step out of the space of your own contracted self, you can enter into a whole dialogue with life and with people based on love and light. And it is like you then become tuned into this web of life that's around you all the time. And life will tell you all sorts of interesting things that you didn't know. I always feel you don't really have to learn anything, you just have to be present. And if you're present, life is... Most people don't notice because they are kind of blinkered, you know? They get up in the morning and they're already gone to sleep at night. They've already decided what the day is going to be, or they're blinkered. And part of our spiritual practice is always to keep an eye out, corner of the eye. Because life, if you look at the corner of the eye, life is there telling you other things, relating to you. You know, life relates to you if you let it. And it tells you all sorts of things you wouldn't otherwise know. Not always pleasant things, of course. Sometimes it pulls your leg and makes tricks, but it is a very playful at times. And it is love, because that is they say it's love that makes the world go round. All you need is love. It's true. But it's not, again, what I'm trying to say is we have limited love enormously in our culture. We have said love has to be between two people. That's love. You know, you start, if you're lucky, you get it from your parent, from mother and father, and then you search for it in a relationship. And if you're lucky, you get, you know, a relationship in which there is love. And maybe you're in love for a while, and then you get this relationship in love, and then if you're lucky, I guess you grow old together, and that's kind of it. But I think this is to do with our Western obsession with the personal. I think life is a love affair. We should take love out of the box of personal relationships and give it back to life too. And sometimes you hear a bird and it's just love. And you see the blossoms on the tree and it's just love talking to you. And I think there you also step out into a different space, and it's a space of love. And it's not, you don't always notice it, but at least be open to the possibility of life communicating to you with love. Sometimes you just see a child playing and it wakes something up in you, or who knows, or you can see anything. You can hear some music, or in silence. And there is this whole subliminal conversation that is taking place all the time. Just like the fact, I was taught that your soul is always talking to you. Your higher self is always talking to you all the time. But most of the time you don't notice. You're so busy. You know, it is always, it's there, watching over you. It doesn't judge you. That is the beauty of it. There is no judgment. The higher self just watches you and tells you, talks to you all the time, and sometimes tries to say, well, if you went over there, it would be a lot easier, you know? Or if you avoided that situation, you would avoid a lot of trouble. Which, of course, but you are too busy and too, you know. Eventually, in spiritual life, you learn to listen. Eventually. To this other dialogue that's taking place. And then what is very interesting, so I'm getting carried away a bit, but what is very interesting, you have the dialogue of yourself, your soul with yourself. And once you've become rooted in that, then you have the dialogue of the Creator with the creation, which is a whole other space. And that's, you know, things then increase exponentially. And that is it is like in Sufism we are taught to catch the hint, which is this very subtle hint, which is quicker than lightning, because we are taught that that is how the Beloved speaks to us. And he doesn't say, you should do that. It's like quick as lightning, and if you miss it, it's gone. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
You bring up another question for me about where to put my attention, and I know that like attracts like, and love attracts love, and spaciousness attracts spaciousness, but how much should we also be paying attention to when we start to constrict, because by definition we're unconscious in those moments.
I agree, yeah.
So how can we do that unless we just wait for something to wake us up again?
Yeah,
and then laugh about it.
There you go. Best advice. Wait for something to wake you up again and then laugh about it. Yeah. Yeah. Because it doesn't really matter in the end. It's part of the expansion, contraction of life. You can't be, the Sufis say you have to have the opposites of fear and hope and intimacy and awe. You can't be always expanded. Otherwise, my gosh, you'd be wandering around with your head in, So you expand and then you contract. There's a whole spiritual science, if you really want to know, of expansion and contraction in Sufism. And that goes to the reconciliation of the opposites. And there are all techniques to help you expand and then to contract. And even in love, the relationship to God, there is what the Sufis call intimacy and awe. You have this incredibly intimate relationship with God. He is in your heart. He is your beloved. He is so sweet. He is, And then, as Ibn al-Arabi said, there is this quality of awe. Remember, the servant is always the servant and the Lord is always the Lord. Then you bow down before God. And that is the contraction. You contract back into just being the servant. Because in the intimacy, you expand, your heart opens. You would do anything for anybody. There's so much love. So there is, very important, there is this duality of expansion and contraction. Most people that you encounter, obviously, are very contracted and need expansion. In my time as a spiritual teacher, I've met people who are far too expanded. Everything is beautiful, everything is wonderful, but they never quite manage to pay the bills.
Oh, I meet those people too.
You meet those too. So then you have to bring them back, contract them. They don't like it. People love to be expanded, but to be contracted. For example, in our spiritual practice, we can go very deep in meditation, but we have to be able to come back at a moment's notice, to come back into this world just as it is. You can go into meditation, you can go somewhere where there's so much space and love and laughter and all sorts. And then you have to be right back, bring your mind back, and get on with life. So it's discipline, expansion and contraction.
Thank you.
Yes, my dear.
You were speaking before about the great amount of effort that we tend.
Everybody makes so much effort, yes.
And the way you speak about moving towards oneness, the path towards oneness with the divine, you speak about it with such a beautiful ease.
Yeah. He's my beloved. My beloved.
Yet, in my experience and in so much that I've heard from other teachers, from spiritual teachings, from serious students in the path, it's filled with discipline and hard work and sacrifice, and your world breaking apart into little pieces.
Oh yeah, all of that too. Yeah.
So can you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you need discipline. For example, in meditation, you have to learn to still the mind. And you need perseverance just to go on. You need to be able to bear, for example, in Sufism, to bear the pain of longing. And yes, you do get broken into little pieces. Yeah. But it's a love affair. If you really love, it hurts like hell. But somewhere it's about something else. And you would do it again, and you would do it again, and you would do it again because you love. If it is just effort and just doing the right thing and doing the right practice, and I think you hope for enlightenment or something, I'm never quite sure. It sounds like too much of this puritanical kind of work ethic. And it was never meant to be like that. It's misunderstanding. Yes, there is the effort. Yes, there is the effort. But it is an effort of love. It's because you want to give yourself to your beloved. Because your heart is dying not to be with God. Because you want to take part in this crazy love affair that is life. You want to sing the song of love It is incredibly painful. Nothing is more painful than that. To have your heart torn open from the inside. Yes, there's no greater pain in creation. One Sufi says somewhere it is greater than the forces of created nature. This pain, more painful than anything else. And you would do it again and again and again, and you wouldn't care, because you love. If you really love, then... And then later there comes a time when it is completely effortless. When it is... He sings in your heart. And he sings such a song of remembrance of God. I never knew that God too desires us. Did you know that? It is not all about us. You think it is at the beginning. You think it's your desire for God. No. Your desire for God, Rumi says, will take you not even to the first way station. It is his desire for you. He wants you. And so he calls you back to himself. And he calls you with this, the Sufis, with this ancient secret of love. And then he makes love to you. And my God, that is something. He is the greatest beloved. He is the greatest lover in creation. And he knows how to make love to those who give themselves to him. Then you are never the same. But that is.
Can you talk more about that?
I can tell you the first experience I had of that, which was, I must have been 26. I remember my father had just died. And I was sitting in meditation in my teacher's apartment. Everybody else was in another room. And suddenly I felt like these butterfly wings on the edge of my heart. Just butterfly wings, just touching the edge of my heart, so softly, so gently. And the whole of my being was filled with love. Every cell in the body was filled with love. The toes, the fingers, the legs, everything was just full of love. And it was so sweet. It was, you always remember the first kiss. You get kissed many, many times, but somehow that first kiss, for most people anyway, it's like you treasure it somewhere, that first sweetness, that first sip of wine of human love. And it is like that mystically. It is I've had many other experiences since then, many different aspects of love. But I always remember that because they're always often unexpected, and that was completely unexpected. And it was just butterfly wings on the inside of my heart. And the whole of me was just full of love, 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 love. There is so much love, There is so much. It goes on and on and on forever. He loves us so much. If you knew how much you were loved somewhere, you wouldn't worry about anything ever again. You would just melt